Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our show, Solutionaries, where we like to focus on different individuals and organizations that are doing very tangible work in the world as far as bringing about regenerative solutions. And that can be anything from health and wellness to self-sustainability to natural building to governance to economics, and just really a wide range of topics that we like to cover. Today, I'll be doing a brief interview with Becky Big Canoe, who's from Canada in the Great Lakes region. And we met recently through the First Doc event, and grandmother Gail Thomas. And Becky is now part of the ongoing Grandmother Council, talking about solutions and traditional wisdom. She's also a member of Indigenous nations there, and she wears a lot of hats, although she's not wearing a hat today. So with that, I want to introduce Becky Big Canoe.
Thank you so much, Michael. You're right. It's literally true. I wear a hat all the time. Yeah, it's been a real year of learning for me this past year, working with different groups and talking to people about this idea that has come to me. I kind of think of it as coming to me in a spiritual way, very much prompted by our current situation and what has happened in the past few years, given the pandemic and all of its effects. I've been kind of like a student, unofficially, of our Indigenous clan systems, of which there are many different nations who've developed these clan systems as their form of internal governance. And the impetus that was pushing me to look at that and to explore how that system of governance was very inclusive of people and put people in relationship with one another. It delineated people's responsibilities to the whole, and it gave everyone who was part of it a sense of belonging and a sense that they were directly involved with what was going on in their communities. And during the pandemic, the opposite of all of that really became apparent, and people were feeling quite isolated and disconnected and frightened, and that has a overall difficult effect on society. So these things came together with this thing I developed, which I believe, like again, I'll say, came from the prompting of spirit to try and develop a way that would unite us. Uniting us is the biggest word. Like, I mean, everybody uses that we need to unite, and yet no one knows exactly how. In fact, that's the question that's always asked, I find, when people are trying to develop something really good to offer to humanity. They get roadblocked by asking the question, how? And I really feel that the kinship way provides that answer. And to describe it very succinctly at this point, because it takes some delving into to understand very well. But the basic idea is to develop 12, and at this point we're going to call it kinship groups. 12 kinship groups that can span the globe. The reason being is that no one should be excluded. And whether your race, religion, class, gender, nothing should keep you out of this groupings, so that we can work toward unity in a systemized, coherent, organized way. And the kinship way is designed so that it can be global, but is meant to be lived locally, in that everyone who becomes members of kinship groups learns how to deploy their participation in the workings of their local community through kinship councils. And it very much reflects how things were used to be done in the Longhouse, for one instance, and in the Medewan Lodge or the Nishnabek Lodge, let's say, where everyone had a place, a responsibility, a role, and a voice. And I think more than anything, that's what is needed today. So that there is the basic explanation of it. And at this point, I have made a short video to kind of encapsulate how it would work and the way it would benefit all of us. So if it's all right,
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
play that now.
before we do that, I also want to say that I know we also talked a lot about your work with sustainability and natural building, which is kind of was the foundational underpinnings of our connection. And then we started talking more about what I call, different models of regenerative culture, which again, governance, economics, self-sustainability, health and wellness, where we're taking a responsibility for ourselves and communities. And I think one of the things that's really fascinating, we had talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago. Years ago, we had started a community hub in California called the Hub, and it was basically the headquarters for the Sacramento River Watershed Project. So I know there's this new emergence of how people are looking at bioregionalism based on watersheds, not necessarily towns and counties and neighborhoods, but everyone that lives in a watershed that is impacted by the things that happen there, whether it's through agriculture or wildfire, natural disaster, et cetera. So I just kind of wanted to preface that, like you said, these are potential templates on a large global level, but I think in my experiences, sometimes we think big, but how do we implement things that are so big? I really like the idea of bringing it down to grassroots in our own watershed. And like we were mentioning with these kinship groups, is how do we bring together in unity our bioregion, our watershed, our community to actually become more resilient and more sustainable. So yes, if you'd like to queue up the video and
Okay.
make sure you have it include the audio.
Yes.
And I know in a little bit we're going to have Adrienne join us. She has a few other visual aids, but I'm really happy to talk with you about this because, again, not to get into the rabbit hole of what we've been doing, but we've been doing these things called regenerative roundtables. And we traveled throughout California and Arizona and New Mexico and Colorado trying to establish these roundtables. But again, more than just concepts here, we're really talking about ideas and how to implement them and give them traction. So with that, we'll go over to your video and we'll be back in just another few minutes after this video with Becky
Okay.
Big Canoe.
Thank you.
Imagine a world where borders blur, not in a geographical sense, but in the realm of human connection. In a world rife with division, how can we foster a sense of unity? Welcome to the Kinship Way, a global initiative aimed at creating bonds that transcend race, religion, and nationality. The Kinship Way is a collection of 12 global groups, each represented by a unique symbol and color. The symbols are rooted in nature, embodying the universal essence of existence. They are the thunderbird, oak tree, and whale, each symbolizing power, resilience, and wisdom, respectively. These symbols are further divided into the 4 colors of red, yellow, black, and white, creating a total of 12 unique kinship groups. The process of joining a kinship group is designed to be simple yet profound. On a designated day, every individual over 12 years old across the globe is assigned a number from 1 to 12. This number corresponds to one of the kinship groups. Following this, individuals log into an online presentation where the kinship groups are deployed randomly. Each kinship group has a dedicated website where members can confirm their membership and learn about their new global family. The beauty of kinship groups is the realization that wherever in the world one might be, they have kin. Be it a bustling city or a quiet town, you belong to a global family that transcends borders. To make this kinship visible, badges corresponding to each kinship group are available to be worn with pride and to recognize others from the same kinship group. Once the kinship groups are formed, the process of self-organization begins. Meetings are arranged, both locally and virtually, where the Kinship Way is explained and explored. It's a forum for members to work together, organize activities, and connect in meaningful ways. The Kinship Way offers an alternative to the existing systems. It's a form of governance that is local yet global, fostering a renewed respect for humanity's diverse cultural expressions. It's a system where everyone has a role to play, a voice to be heard, and a decision to make. In the face of chaos and confusion, The Kinship Way offers stability and strength. It overlays existing systems without interfering, providing clear channels of communication if all else fails. It's a tool for systemic change, a beacon of hope in a world yearning for unity. To learn more about the Kinship Way, visit thekinshipway.earth. With an open mind and an open heart, you too can be part of this global initiative, fostering peace, prosperity, and unity. So, drop every weaponized bias, embrace the diversity of humanity, and together let's step into a future where unity is not just a dream, but a reality. In the spirit of kinship, let's walk into this bright new day, together and in a good way.
All right, very nice. We love those visual aids.
Yeah.
So
That's a production of with AI's assistance, I have to say. And I at this point might rewrite it a little bit, but I think it gets the point across a little.
absolutely. And what I think is fascinating, and I will say I've been very discerning about the spirit of collaboration and people I'm working with, because, you know, I meet thousands of people and everyone has a great idea, but it takes years of tenacity and follow through and diligence to implement some of these concepts. And I know, I mean, I know off the top of my head a dozen other watershed or bioregional groups that are trying to do similar things. But what I really appreciate, especially, you know, our point of connection through the Earthstock and the Grandmother Council, is that you not only have a great idea and a model, but you also come from a background of indigenous and traditional wisdom. And as a grandmother, it's a voice, it's a whole area of knowledge that I think has been not listened to and has kind of been sidelined for so many, well, here in North America for hundreds of years. So I'm really inspired and honored just to have this getting to know each other and the potential to collaborate. And I see so quickly how these pieces can come together. So why don't you, before we go over to Adrian, I know who's going to come on in a few minutes. So where are you right now in your process? And you know, if people were to contact you, how do they kind of start to get traction, or how do you see that working right now? Because it's always about how do we deploy our ideas into the, you know, physical world,
Yeah.
into action.
So true. The first thing I better say is that kinship.earth is not active yet, but it's in the works. It's in planning. I tried to do some online work with people on it, but I'm finding that it needs more explanation in depth prior to that happening. So I decided to pull back and try and write it into a book. And then I thought that if we can do that, then we can produce a video that will really delve into the explanation in a useful kind of way, so people will understand. And I'm looking at like getting that completed, and I'm thinking of using the solstices and the equinoxes as markers in time to go through the process of the steps, because you know, between say this coming solstice and the equinox, which is about 3 months, get that book ready for publication, and then another to the other solstice, get the video out, and then say for another year cycle, prepare people for deployment, because I really think that at the rate that things are going on in the world and governments are being pressured uh, by the people to well, do things they're not really designed to do anymore. They simply can't keep up with what's going on.
And
And people will
and
realize
also,
in the meantime that they have to take the power back in their own hands, and the responsibility for stable society has to be brought back to the people. And this is the way how, really.
yeah, we have to really disassemble the hierarchy. And I know a big part of that, based on my background experience and the people I work with, it's very much, you know, me, I relate it to the birth of the white buffalo calf, you know, the idea of bringing the feminine, the sacred feminine back into the council, back into the discourse, and also doing things, like you said, through a council process. And again, I'm really intrigued. I see so much potential, and, you know,
Yeah.
eight, eight,
Well, I think I think the major part of grandmother wisdom is that no one should be left out. And all of us together are responsible for the well-being of all of the children. And not very often do I hear children referred to, and I'm hearing people trying to come up with plans to reorganize us in such a way that we're doing things correctly. We're never talking about the children, which is where we need to put our effort, because the future you're going to have is determined by what you teach children. So that's why I often reiterate that all of this has the children at the center, and the children represent the coming generations. And the way we put it is 7 generations into the future. So
Right, and
when
we
you
have
think about the
Adrian.
society you want, you begin educating the children that way.
Right, and we have Adrian on the call.
Yeah.
You want to just
We're,
take a
we're
quick
fortunate
moment?
to have Adrian.
Okay. Do you want to introduce her for
Yes.
a minute, and then she's
Yes,
going to
this is
share
my
some visual aids.
Yes, this is my friend Adrian, who I met through her studies at the bioregional education program put on by Joe Brewer and Penny Brewer. And when they were doing the segment on governance, I kind of popped in there and talked about the kinship way. And Adrian approached me, and when I saw how deeply she was looking into what I was presenting, I was so impressed. And it's exactly what I've been hoping for in terms of feedback. And so Adrian has produced some really interesting slides that help us both illustrate what kind of depth, and I call it utility or workability, that Kinship Way would have once adopted by the people, let's just say. So I'm gonna hand it over to Adrian and ask her to just start illustrating slides, and then as she talks about what she understands, I will comment as well.
Welcome, Adrian.
Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you. Yeah, these slides were my attempt I'm very visually oriented, so I needed these to help me understand the Kinship Way. And then I shared them and people liked them. So they're a work in progress. As my understanding grows, they grow. So that's why it says understanding. This purpose, spirit, and heart, inclusive, self-determining, participatory governance. And the social organization, the kinship groups, and stage of life advisory councils, and the context of place within the biosphere, communities along watersheds within bioregions on Earth of the Kinship Way. Inclusive, participatory governance of all people, of all cultures and faiths. Everyone is responsible to help create the society we all want to live in. Everyone has a supportive social network providing avenues for engagement, and everyone is part of a social fabric providing a sense of belonging, purpose, value, agency, freedom, autonomy, self-determination, and the means to take responsibility, leaving future generations a healthy, livable planet and a culture of peace and responsibility. So we are all have these things in common. The sun provides the energy. There is the sky realm,
Which would be represented by the thunderbird,
the land realm,
the land realm
and the water realm.
represented by the oak tree, and the water realm represented by the whale.
According to a quick Google search, these life forms are universal and worldwide, and the raptor, the oak, and the whale are keystone species. We also all share the 4 directions. Stand in the center. We all
These
share the cycles of,
designations, yeah, and I'd just like to add that these designations in this language on this wheel of the four colors has very, very many layers of meaning, but it's in the Anishinaabe language, and it's the Anishinaabe reflection here. There would be similar type things in people from, say, the South Pacific or the Middle East, whatever, wherever indigenous people are, they're going to have similar explanations for the directions and what they mean. But this one here is the Anishinaabe, and it's a good one to start with. We want to recognize those elements of the earth and the sky that relate to us in this system. So just wanted to add that.
this is the same as a chart. This is the idea that we, of how people might be picked for, sort of just
Yeah, everyone would be given a number, and then we would draw the names kind of randomly to which kin group you would be designated to, because that way it would kind of like probably even out the demographic profile of every group would be similar. Go ahead, Adrian.
So the basics is that every community has a full set of the 12 kinship groups within it. And every person over the age of 12 is assigned to a kinship group. And each group in a community, through the development of processes, appoints a head man and a head woman to represent them in a council, so that each community has a kinship council. And each kinship group has 9 to 13 advisory councils, which reflect the demographics of ages and stages of life, which you'll see in another slide. And again, the sense of belonging, everyone belongs. These advisory councils are groups within each kinship group arranged by age and gender, youth, middle adults, adults, and seniors. Each would have a female group, a male group, and if needed in a community, a two-spirit or non-binary group. Elders who have one group inclusive of male, female, and two-spirit together. Children don't have an advisory council, but are advocated and cared for by all others, central, as Becky said. And each age and gender group has a representative to represent their stage of life issues, their needs, their responsibilities, their abilities to the head man and head woman of their kinship group. The kinship council is made up of a head man and head woman from each of the 12 kinship groups. This is just a picture that showing everyone is at the table of all demographics. Here you can see the organization of communities of many different kinds, rural, urban, along watersheds within the bioregions on Earth. This I added in, Becky doesn't. Somebody made me aware of Eleanor Ostrom's idea that if we share our resources in common, they aren't really a commons unless they're governed by their users, not a remote authority. And the video I won't play, we don't, but it's, she goes into, oops, uh-oh, it's gonna play. Don't play, stop. And since the
I'll watch it
kinship
later.
group, yeah, the 4 kinship groups, a third of the population would be responsible for the air, and a third responsible for land, and a third for the water. This is another thing I didn't, uh, I was playing around with the idea of the difference between the way we do town halls today or different gatherings where we're debating and we might attack one another and all this. And the idea that a kinship group, the word kinship, bringing, gathering with family and neighbors to care for each other, be concerned for each other. And then stuff about the cycle, this sitting in circle where we all have equal voice. And I just have a variety of, can you have a circle in a rectangular Zoom room? Just being silly. A little bit on the facilitation. In a circle, everyone's voice is heard equally, shared center, purpose, or theme, shared leadership. There are nested levels of well-being to be concerned about in a circle, the individual, the group. This was taken by, I can't remember, sorry. And that's the connections, the Facebook page. There is a Facebook page group you can go to, the Kinship Way Facebook group, and the kinshipway.earth to be launching eventually.
Great. Well,
Thanks.
well, the images definitely help. And I'm just curious because I know there's a lot of different models for governance too. So how do you see decision making actually happening? Is that a majority? Is that a democracy? Is it? Because I know that, I currently have a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and everyone has a vote. And we have taken on a couple projects, including emergency response to the wildfire in Lahaina. And right now we're focused on doing some support for North Carolina. But how do you see, Becky, or you, like the actual coming to a decision process? How is that based?
Well, it's very much like the circle structure is the first part of it. It's where everyone sits as equals. And then you work toward consensus. Like, first of all, the people of the groups have to identify what are their needs and their wants. And those are the, going to be the first concerns when we're starting to reorganize ourselves. Are we accessing what we need and what we want? So everyone will express that. And those things that are most important to most people will float to the top, and we discuss them. How do we fulfill those needs and wants? Do we have the resources here amongst ourselves? Do we need to work with neighbors in order to fulfill those needs and stuff like that? But in general, people can learn about the indigenous ways of what we call the grandfather teachings, which are principles to live by. And they promote good relationship in that, they're based on love, honesty, sharing, caring, wisdom, courage, and those type of things. And when you begin to teach those to children at a young age, and you encourage the use of diplomacy and not using, moving away from accumulation and greed, you'll find that it's much easier to get people to begin to align their values, what they need and want, with what helps their neighbor. And so, it might not be a really concise answer at this point, but what's necessary is for people to sit together in council to discover how to do it properly.
Right. Well, I'm really glad that we had the time to dig in. There's aspects of the kinship way. I mean, in all, I'm really fascinated by it. I think it makes a lot of sense. And, I can kind of see how our puzzle pieces might be able to fit together and support. I find it sad that in this age, it seems like there's so many good ideas. There's so many good ideas that can fit in a room. And it tends to be that so many people are focused on their good idea that it's hard to get the actual integration, collaboration, and deployment. So I'm not saying that to be pessimistic. I'm just saying that as a realist, because I think there's a lot of elements of what you're doing that's a great model, based on the idea of bioregionalism and watersheds. So before we get to wrapping, because I could go on for hours on this topic, maybe we do another session where we could drill down a little bit. If people are more
Yeah.
interested in some of your work, how do they find you?
Oh, well, I'm just basically available at Facebook and get back to you within a day or two. Please come and join our group on Facebook, the Kinship Way. Ask questions, read the documents that are available there. We'll start very simply and organically there. And as we continue, if interest is generated here through this, Michael, we'll have another session. We'll delve a little deeper, show people more how the Kinship Way helps to reconnect people to the earth in a very literal way. Helps us to become working together for community self-sufficiency, which is very important. We need to decentralize a lot of the things that have become centralized. So yeah, just look me up, Becky Big Canoe on Facebook, and say hi. Say hi, Ken.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. And I want to thank Adrian for showing up with visual aids. And I want to thank folks for tuning in to watch another episode of Solutionaries and more. I've been very committed. I used to actually do a show called The Golden Road. And I stopped doing it because during the pandemic, it seemed like all my audience became podcasters and everybody now has their own podcasts. But I've had to be really discerning about working with people and promoting and supporting people that I actually see that there's a tangible collaboration there, as opposed to just adding more information into this already culture of information saturation. So I'm really glad that we had some time together to drop in tonight and learn more about the Kinship Way and about the potential of what we can do and move forward in the future. And I want to thank Adrian for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Michael. Enjoy your evening.
You too. Thank you. Have a great night. And thanks everyone for tuning into Solutionaries as I'm broadcasting live from Boulder Mall, Boulder, Colorado. So thanks for joining us.
Okay, bye for now.